Good morning, third graders. I hope that you had an awesome day yesterday and you got outside to play. It was beautiful out. So today we're going to continue with our Read Aloud Rump by Liesl Shurtliff. Today we're on chapter 18. It's called In Search of a Stiltskin. So last chapter was called Martha's Endless Tales. So the kitchen cook, or I'm not exactly sure what her title is, of the castle rescued Rump after he fell out of the tower. And she was a talker, so she talked a lot to Rump. And now he's leaving and he's in search of a stiltskin to solve all of his problems. So here we go. Chapter 18, In Search of a Stiltskin. Getting out of the castle was a lot simpler than getting in, especially with the wedding. I was practically flooded out by the parade of people flowing through the gates, shouting and throwing handfuls of grain. They must not be too worried about famine, but I suppose if you had a queen who could turn straw into gold, you wouldn't worry about much of anything. The day was sunny and warm, perfect for a wedding. Gnomes skipped and pranced among the crowds, squealing the day's wonderful news. The king has wed to the girl who spins the golden threads. I followed the crowd down the hill, and who would have thought? Nothing was right there where I left him, chewing grass and looking bored. I guess no one thought it worth their while to take him, or he wouldn't go even if they tried. I was actually a little proud of Nothing as I took hold of the rope and pulled him away. Soon the royal carriage emerged from the castle gates behind me to parade through the kingdom and display the new queen. The roads were flooded with nobles and soldiers and servants and peasants, and they all erupted into victorious shouts as the carriage came into view. There was Opal, Queen Opal, wearing a crown on her head and a gown embroidered with gold thread. She smiled, but looked as blank as ever, and her tongue wound around her mouth. I wonder if she was nervous. King Barf's gold crown was bigger than his head, and he was dressed in even more gold than the first time I saw him. Gold breastplate, armbands, a gold-hilted sword and scabbard, gold tassels and buckles, and gold embroidery all over. It was amazing they both weren't devoured by pixies. But then I saw a dozen servants surrounding them, swatting the pixies away with big paddles or spraying them with dirt. The carriage was also encased in light netting. A few unfortunate servants were tossing fat gold coins into the street, warding off pixies as best they could. People were crawling and scratching to get at the gold. The miller and all his sons were in the crowd, and they bumped and shoved more than anyone, snarling to get the coins. It was like watching a pack of wild beasts fight over pieces of meat. Animals. That's what they all were. As I pushed my way out of the swelling crowd, I saw someone else I recognized. Kessler, the peddler, sat on the side of the road all by himself. His patchy sack lay limp and empty by his side. He was barefoot and filthy, his bright orange hair dingy from dirt and grease. But at least he had no mice around him. I wondered how he'd gotten rid of them. Perhaps he could tell me how to undo all the trouble I had caused. Remember, Kessler, the peddler, was in the beginning, and he used magic, and then all of the mice followed him out of the town, kind of like the Pied Piper. Let's keep reading. Kessler held a small object up close to his face. Then he pressed the object between his hands, closed his eyes, and muttered something. When he opened his hands and peeked inside, he growled with rage and frustration, and then repeated the ritual. "Hello, Kessler." "What?" He turned around wildly to see who had spoken to him, and finally focused on me. "Oh, yes. Hello there. Fine day to you, sir." He looked back down at his hands and muttered some more. I leaned in closer to see what he had caught, and he had caught a glint of gold, one of the fat gold coins from the wedding. "What are you trying to do?" "Multiply, multiply," he said, and he scratched at his head. "More gold, more, more, more." He started muttering again and rubbed the coin between his hands. "What happened to the mice? How did you make them go away?" I asked. "What? Mice? Oh, they're gone. I can make things disappear, you know. Would you like to see? But oh, I forgot. What did I forget? He scratched and pulled at his hair, and he went back to his gold coin, holding it to his face and whispering to it. I stared at him, horrified. Poor Kessler. He had been driven mad by his magic, yet he couldn't stop. Was this what was to become of me? Was this what was to become of me? I pulled at nothing as we turned down a road that led away from the crowds and the king and queen and Kessler. I crossed a bridge over a river and came to a sign that pointed in the direction I was headed. It read, "Yonder and beyond." Yonder. That's where my mother was from. Yonder was far from the king's city, and if her family was still there, perhaps they would know about spinning and how I could get out of this heap of trouble. Maybe I could even learn my name. We had barely traveled a mile when dusk approached. I wanted to get a little farther from the kingdom, but nothing kept turning around and going the other direction. Then, when I had him headed the right way, he kept stopping to graze the grass. We were moving so slowly that the ants beneath us reached a destination before we did. I made up a rhyme about nothing. Nothing's a fool. He does nothing but drool. But I can rule a fool, 'cause I stepped in his pool of drool. Yuck. It was getting dark in the eastern woods. I was exhausted, even though we'd probably traveled only 2 miles after all of nothing's walking in the wrong direction, and my whole body was still stiff and sore from my fall. The gnome scurried up the road, squealing, "Message for Rump! Message for Rump! Message for Rump!" The gnome came right up to my feet. "Message for Rump! Message for Rump!" "I'm Rump," I said, irritated. The gnome jumped with glee, but he was breathing hard. He must have run a long time to catch up with me. Did these creatures ever lose energy? The gnome cleared his throat and got on with delivering his message, half shouting, half squealing. "Dear Rump, you idiot, what did you do, fall out of a tower? We know Opal will be queen now, and Granny says if you keep spinning for her, it will come out no good. If it hasn't already. No more bargains. Get away from her as fast as you can and hide. Opal will have to deal on her own. Your friend, Red. P.S. Granny told me to remind you, watch your step." Of course. Such useful advice after I'd finally fallen out of the tower. The gnome bounced eagerly in front of me, hoping to carry another message. I snatched him by the ears and held him up. "Take this message back to Red. Dear Red, I fell out of the tower because Opal promised to give me her firstborn child in exchange for gold. What would you have done? I've already taken your advice as far away as possible. I'm traveling to Yonder. If I don't starve before I get there or get eaten by pixies or trolls or annoyed to death by your gnomes. Your friend, Rump." "Now repeat," I told the gnome. The gnome repeated the message, even the part about the gnomes annoying me, with squealing excitement. It occurred to me that gnomes really didn't have brains, just some space in their heads that stored our words and spat them back out when they had reached the receiver. They could even insult themselves with glee. The gnome scurried off screeching, "Message for Red, message for Red." I wondered if he would stop to sleep or eat before he got there. I knew I needed to eat and find a place to sleep. I had to stop for the night, and I couldn't rely on the hope that I might find a farm or village soon. The side of the road was thick with trees and shrubs. Maybe I could find some early berries or some edible mushrooms so I could save Martha's bread and pie for later. Who knew how long I would be on the road? I tugged at nothing to go into the trees, but he didn't move. "There's better grazing in there," I said. I tugged some more on nothing, but nothing didn't budge. I slapped his rear and yanked and pulled, and then he drove forward and knocked me flat on my back. The wind whooshed out of me. I stuck my tongue out at nothing and left him grazing in the road. I walked into the trees a ways. It was early spring, so the plants were just starting to sprout and grow buds, but nothing was edible yet. I turned up leaves and dug a bit in the dirt, but I didn't find so much as a snail. I walked farther, and suddenly, right before me was the most amazing sight. An apple tree! A huge apple tree, its branches bent to the earth with the weight of apples, ripe, juicy apples, beckoning me to sink my teeth into them. My mouth watered. I stepped forward and reached for an apple. Snap! Shwip! Shlunk! Instantly, I was seized by my ankle and yanked upside down into the air. I yelped and wriggled, but my ankle was held fast by some kind of rope. Next moment, I heard something big lumbering through the brush. We've got one! We've got one! A creature burst through the trees. We've got a boy. More creatures came rushing through the trees. They were all big and brutish, with arms as thick as my stomach that hung down to their knees. Their faces were squashed and animal-like, with bulbous noses and yellow eyes and teeth. Trolls. All right, so that is the cliffhanger that Liesl Shurtliff is going to leave us with at the end of chapter 18. Our next chapter is chapter 19, and it's titled Trolls, Witches, and Poison Apples. So have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow with chapter 19. Bye.